standards and right education system.
I'm the former Frankie.
Of the Northwest Pass, we really need somebody different.
Your career, you're used to winning. Life, it was everything to us.
7 or 8 weeks of two-a-days.
They really made me appreciate
We're allowed to win.
it means coming in and we'll be shooting the whole time.
Let's go back real quick to the Enid Walk of Fame.
Of course, we have training in confined space.
Legitimate lady to go a little more.
A good safety tip on that, Stephen.
Putting our hat on and getting out there and doing the job.
Television model that you watched growing up.
Houston, this is the International Space Station.
City Connections begins right now.
Hello again and welcome to City Connections. Your health is our topic today as we continue in our series on your health. And I'd like to read a little bit of bio information on our special guest. She's been to the Enid Television Network studios before, but this is a return engagement for her, and we're glad that she's back. For many years, Chickasaw leaders have greeted people to the unconquered and unconquerable Chickasaw Nation, a nation known for its warriors and its dynamic women. The Chickasaw Nation Dynamic Woman of the Year Award was established in 2006, and it's to honor a Chickasaw woman who has made significant contributions to the nation and served as a role model to others and exemplified Chickasaw values, culture, and traditions. And our special guest today is Shelby Rowe, and Shelby is the Chickasaw Nation's 2016 Dynamic Woman of the Year. And so when I introduced her last time, I just introduced her as the Suicide Prevention Program Manager, but that's a lot fancier title this time, Shelby. Welcome back to the ETN studios. And,
Thank you.
And congratulations on your recognition there from the Chickasaw Nation.
Thank you very much.
That's very impressive. And if you go to chickasaw.tv, you'll see an interview that they featured Shelby on, along with many other people. And I visited that site yesterday, chickasaw.tv, very impressive site, but you can learn more about Shelby and her work that she does for the state of Oklahoma and also for the Chickasaw Nation. Well, again, welcome back. You are the Suicide Prevention Program Manager, and it's under the umbrella of the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. Long title.
Very long title.
And it's still a long title.
It is. You got to stop and take a couple breaths in the middle of that.
Yeah. Well, welcome back. And our previous visit, we talked about suicide prevention and we just kind of not really danced around the topic, but we tried to cover as many things we could in a short amount of time on suicide prevention. And as I mentioned last time, suicide is a major public health concern. Over 40,000 individuals die by suicide each year in the United States. 40,000 individuals. And according to that number, it is the 10th leading cause of death. And Shelby, when you were here a few months ago, it was basically to promote your work, but also talk about suicide prevention and the programs. But I believe it was during September when it was designated, the Awareness Month. What is the significance? Because so many organizations have their month to promote their cause. But why do you feel like it's important that any month you've got to promote suicide prevention programs?
So having it in a month kind of rallies all of the organizations across the country who work on suicide prevention to kind of have a shared voice that month, to raise awareness that we're all working throughout the year doing things, but if everyone gets together and say, okay, for 1 month, we're all going to do social media, do interviews, do special speaking engagements. We're going to host conferences and trainings and just really emphasize this month we're going to raise as much awareness as we can for suicide prevention, for recovery through a suicidal crisis, and let people know that there is hope. And so it's just kind of a rallying of the troops to get everyone on point, on message, and going the same direction to save lives.
Let's go back to the beginning for a little bit. As the Suicide Prevention Program Manager,
yes.
Can you kind of give me a typical day or a typical week? Earlier you mentioned you was going to Tulsa, you was going to Norman, back to Oklahoma City. Can you kind of give us, as people aren't fully aware of your role or maybe what Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services really do, what's your week like?
So to me, most of the heroes in our field, the boots on the ground, are out in communities across the state. Okay. And so my job is to make sure they have everything that they need. So I am working on, the boring stuff like budgets and reports, but then also going to speak across the state and share messages, make sure that we're bringing evidence-based programs. So I travel tomorrow, I'll be in Tulsa, then I'll be in Norman. Today I'm up here in Enid, and making sure that we're raising awareness, that we're bringing the tools the individuals need, that we're setting up partnerships with organizations, be it schools, community mental health centers. So I'm kind of the politician of my field to make sure that we're setting up the right partnerships and clearing away bureaucracy, red tape, any barriers that is keeping people in the community from doing what they need to do at the school level, community level, that we're bringing good trainings into communities so that lives can be saved.
When you say out into the field, are you saying like a Woodward, an Alva, Ponca City? I mean, can you give us a number of the so-called boots on the ground locations across the state?
Sure. With my program, we partner with 5 school districts and in 5 different school communities to do more intensive work. So our 6 priority counties are, we have Comanche County, Cleveland County, Oklahoma, Tulsa, Pittsburgh, and Seminole. And in each of those counties, we work with community organizations. We work with different school districts. But in Tulsa County, we're working with Berryhill and Collinsville are our 2 school districts there. And then we're also working with Family and Children's Services to make sure that we have good care, so that if a student is identified at risk at a school, we've come in and we've trained the school teachers, we've trained the school counselors, the school administrators of how best to identify that young person early before it's a life-threatening crisis, and then how to get them the help they need. Then we partner with Family and Children's Services that has mental health care that can provide the screenings, and also runs the Tulsa County affiliate for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline Network. And we provide training and funding for follow-up services. So, if you're a parent and your 14-year-old child, you go up to the school and they say, we're really worried that your child is at risk for suicide, there's not many more frightening conversations you can have. And so with our partnerships with the schools and with Family and Children's Services, to make that a smoother transition, so that school counselor in the conversation can say, hey, I know this is really overwhelming. Would you like someone to call you from Family and Children's Services, and they can walk you through what's available and the steps to recovery and help you put together a plan that fits your family that's going to keep your child safe. And then they'll keep up with them until that young person makes it to their second appointment.
Well, one of our goals today, and the last time that Shelby was here, was really just to raise awareness of the significance of these programs and the work that you do across the state, because somebody be watching this interview and say, I didn't know this was accessible, or I didn't know that this was available, so I appreciate you sharing all of that. Well, let's get right to one of the key topics that we want to discuss today, warning signs of suicide. What could be those warning signs?
So some of the common warning signs, and these are things that let you know that someone is in a crisis. In suicide, we have risk factors and warning signs. And risk factors are the things that may put you at greater risk. Being a male, over 75% of those who die by suicide are male. So a risk factor is being a male, but that's not a warning sign. Most men don't die by suicide, where warning signs are things to look for that someone may be in immediate risk within a week or 24 hours. So sometimes it's things that people say. Sometimes one may be saying, everyone would be better off without me. What's the point in living? Very rarely is it that someone comes directly out and says, hey, I'm thinking about killing myself. That's a really scary thing to say.
So let me interrupt.
And so they don't.
So, excuse me. When you just saying that statement, what came to mind was the bullying. Bullying fits into which category then? If it just overwhelms an individual.
So
if it does have an impact, I don't.
Right. So it does. It is a risk factor.
Risk factor. Okay.
It's a risk factor because again, most people, bullying is a horrible phenomena, and we could do a whole other show on how we've lost our culture of kindness in this country. that's allowed, that being cruel and abusive to other people is seen as the norm for children, which it is not, and we can work on changing that. But bullying is a risk factor, but the warning signs would be in how that person responds to the bullying.
Okay.
So things that you would see. So if they're withdrawing from friends and family, you see a change in their appearance, change in their eating habits, sleep patterns. Those are the warning signs. The bullying is a risk factor, and that can be job stress. You know, bullying doesn't just take place in a schoolyard. It can be workplace stress and harassment.
Sure.
It can be domestic violence within your family. Being the victim of cruelty, being targeted, is damaging to us no matter where we're at. And those long-term, prolonged, stressful situations can magnify our risk because it just keeps us in constant turmoil. But sometimes it's how we respond to the bullying. So if we have buffers, a support system, have different perspectives to kind of step out of that and say, hey, yes, I can't control that, but I'm going to go over here because these people love me, support me. Their opinion doesn't matter.
And so much of life, without simplifying things, is probably grouped into our responses to things. Because life stuff happens, but it's our response to that. So, our special guest today on City Connections, Your Health, is Shelby Rowe. Shelby is a suicide prevention program manager with the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. We know a variety of individuals, Shelby, watch the interviews that we've done, well, you and I have done, and other particular programs. So if a viewer is watching this show, how can they help someone that may be at risk?
So the first thing they can do is to let them know that they care. And it seems really simple, but just to say, hey, I've noticed you're not yourself lately. I've noticed something's changed. Do you want to talk? I'm here for you. I care about you. That is sometimes one of the first, because oftentimes when someone is thinking about suicide, they're feeling very isolated, feeling like a burden, and they've lost their voice, that ability to really reach out for help. And so reaching out and engaging them in a conversation about anything can be really helpful. When you ask, hey, are you okay? I'm really worried about you. Then it's our job to listen. So asking, we can't just say, oh, are you okay? And they say no. And we go, okay, well, I'll see you later. Have a good day.
Yeah.
That we actually, have to sit and listen.
That reminds me of a time. I was having lunch or something, and I was kind of doing a test, if you will, but I was sitting at the table, and the waitress came to the table and said, hello, how you doing? And I said, I am having one of the worst days of my life. And she goes, okay, what would you like to order today? And it was just like it just sailed on by, but it was a test for me just to kind of say that, but I just thought, she's really not listening. So I guess your point you're hitting home is that if you take time to ask that individual what's going on, how you're feeling, then enough of that, put on your listening ears.
And don't be that waitress. And if you're not that person, if it's someone you don't know very well, but you've picked up and you know that something's changed, you can always recruit someone else to go with you. If you notice that they're upset, you're like, I don't really have a relationship with them, but I know they're not okay. Feel free to get someone else that you think they'd be more likely to talk to. But most of the time in the aftermath, unfortunately, it's not that people didn't notice that someone was upset or distraught, in despair. It was no one knew what to say, so they didn't say anything. So say something. Be genuine, show that you sincerely care, and that makes all the difference in the world.
One of the questions that we kind of decided on as we were talking yesterday in preparation for our visit was, if someone is watching that may be struggling, what can they do to keep themselves safe in the midst of a crisis? And I thought that was a great question, but I sure didn't have an answer. Hopefully you do.
There's a couple things that they can do. One, I would say if anyone is struggling right now, to know that there is hope. There is hope for things to get better. find someone to reach out to. If you don't have anyone in your personal life that you feel comfortable talking to, oftentimes, it may be someone that they think because they're a CEO, because of their position, or I'm a physician, I can't reach out for help. You absolutely can reach out for help. Everyone deserves help. It's okay to reach out and say, hey, I'm not okay right now. I've used the analogy a lot of times saying, if you had a broken leg right now, would you feel okay reaching out for help? Like, yes. It's like,
Immediately.
you have, you are in a life-threatening health crisis and you deserve help. You deserve to live. And so to find someone to reach out to. Maybe you don't have someone you can talk to, you can always call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-TALK. It's answered 24 hours a day by trained individuals here in Oklahoma that will get you connected with resources. You can also text if you don't want to talk. If you can't find your voice enough to talk, you can text HELP to 741-741. And again, you will, trained crisis intervention specialists will respond to you 24 hours a day and help you to stay safe. It's also good, especially if you know that you're heading into a rough time of the year. There's a lot of individuals that this may be their first holiday season after a divorce, after the death of a child, after the death of a parent, to kind of know ahead of time what you're going to need and build in some self-care. Like, make for yourself a list. What are things that make me feel better? It may be as simple as, I'm going to sing to my favorite car, my favorite song
Sure.
in my car. I'm going to go get some ice cream. I'm going to do something.
Keep that thought, because with you mentioning about the holidays coming up, and we're going to take a short break, we want to spend a few more minutes than we normally would talking about some of those suggestions facing the holidays, maybe the first time by yourself or whatever. Life has changed, but we'll do that in just a moment. Again, our special guest today is Shelby Rowe. Shelby is the, Suicide Prevention Program Manager, the Oklahoma Department of Health and Substance Abuse Services. And again, I encourage you to learn more about her behind the scenes if you go to the Chickasaw.tv website. Not promoting their website, but it is good.
It is really good.
But there was just great information about why she's involved and just her life, if you will, the things that we won't be able to cover today, and you can learn more about Shelby Rowe. So thanks for joining us here on City Connections, Your Health, and we'll have more with Shelby right after this. Welcome back to City Connections, special edition on Your Health. And we're talking about suicide prevention programs with the manager, Shelby Rowe. And Shelby, the other day, I was in line to pay a bill, if you will, and I overheard the person that was in front of me. They were scheduling an appointment, and it was going to be Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. I don't know, it was around that time. And the person made the comment, "Oh, I just lost my mother, and this is the first time without her for the holidays. I'm not quite sure what my schedule is going to be." And again, I was quite a few feet away, but I just heard the cautiousness and the seriousness and really this kind of sadness in her voice of facing a birthday, a holiday, an anniversary or something without a particular individual. And I guess holidays and birthdays, and just, we have holidays all the time, Memorial Days to Veterans Day and all that. They have an impact on people when you've lost someone and you're without them for that first time. And you were saying some things to do.
Right, for those, losing someone that you love, be it to death, divorce, or any reason, is painful.
Your pet.
And losing your pet is painful. And so those times of year when everyone gathers together can be a time that's really hard to endure, because that what you're missing becomes so much more clear. You know, someone in my family, it was my grandmother who always, you know, made the big meals, and then after she died, it was like, well, what do we do? Because to sit down with a big meal, you couldn't do that without thinking about her. So, especially if there's a loss to suicide, that can be a really complicated loss to grieve. There's a lot of things I've heard that families over the years have done to help get through. One thing is just that it's okay to give yourself permission to take a break from holidays. You know, one family I know, they just made their new Christmas tradition of going to the movies. They get up in the morning and they go to the movies. They see whatever's playing. Sure. They will be there all day, because they did it the very first year that her father had died, and then thought, well, we'll do this for a few years until we can do Christmas again. But then they were making so many memories together as a family and coming together that they decided, it's been 15 years, and they've decided they like the movie tradition better than that. Others I know have, if they know that everyone's going to be thinking about that lost loved one, so you know, what's something that they enjoy. One family that I know lost a young man that every year he would get people books for Christmas. And so their new tradition is they draw names at Thanksgiving, and then they buy a book for whoever it is, and then it's wrapped under the tree with the name of that young man that they lost. And so their secret Santa, it's their way of bringing him to the table. They know the gifts are from each other, but it's their way of remembering him and things that he did for the holidays. Some will light a candle. Some will go volunteer, you know, to change, to give back to others. When we're hurting, sometimes if we can go and help others, it helps us as well.
And that action right there of going out to help others, that was kind of the thought I had about maybe one of the most popular things to do, or a tip during the grieving process, is to look outside and to help others or whatever. Is there a so-called popular or most frequent tip when it comes to dealing with the grieving process, or is it just quite a variety?
It's quite a variety. I would say find what works for you.
Yeah.
If you're having trouble finding that, go and talk. There are grief specialists, mental health professionals. A lot of your hospitals or hospice facilities have counselors that are specially trained in grieving, and to just make an appointment. You may not need to see them more than once, but to go and see. And online there are so many good tips. Sometimes to find an online support group. I have a friend of mine that lost her son to suicide, and so she ended up, over a couple of years, met a couple other moms that had lost children. Okay. And they have like a mom's luncheon where they get together. Like, we can't do a support group and be sad, but we're going to get together every year and talk about whatever. But we're not allowed to talk about grief. We need to just be there for each other.
Interesting.
And so whatever works for you,
so it's
but
important
take
to
time
know.
and find it.
So it is important to know that one size does not fit all, and everybody's different. Everybody handles grief differently, maybe in a different time frame. It's just all different. So there's no cookie cutter approach to this. As you said, what works for that individual.
I would say the worst thing to do is to, I call shoulding on yourself. Don't should. If you're saying, well, I should do this, I should do that, don't. Just do what feels right and what you need to do and what you want to do. So if you find yourself saying more that you should instead of I want, stop and change direction.
I can see that on a bumper sticker, I should have. And people say, no.
No.
On a more serious topic, or additional serious topic I should mention, you continue to read more and more about our veterans. Hospitals, care, just relationships, just veterans are in our news. And a number that's been floating around here recently is 20 veterans a day take their lives. And I don't know if that is a nationwide number. You would be more tuned into that. But my question is, right here in Oklahoma, how are we doing? Is that 20 a day? Is Oklahoma a big part of that number or a small part? Do we have a and there's multiple questions, I'm sorry, but do we have a problem with veteran suicide here in Oklahoma?
Well, the 20 a day is a national number.
Okay.
So that is nationally.
All right.
We do know, and Oklahoma stays pretty consistent with the national average, that about 1 in 5 of every death by suicide is someone who served in the armed forces.
Okay.
We have a middle-aged man suicide problem in Oklahoma and nationwide.
And you're middle
and
aged.
98% of veterans are men. So
And help us on that for our viewers. Middle age, your definition for ages, what is that?
So statistically
30 to
speaking,
50?
and I'm right in the middle of this too, but is the different CDC categories would be the 35 to 44 and 45 to 54, consistent increases. And one of the big factors, and I think with veterans it plays into it, when we talk about risk factors again, is a lack of help-seeking behavior. If you're a veteran and you're trained to be, you are who responds and who keeps people safe. You are the defender of freedom and democracy. You are hardwired to not ask for help. And so the VA has been working really hard over the past several years and really taken some phenomenal strides in building in more ways to catch someone at risk when they're interacting with the healthcare system, to recognize and get them help before it's a life-threatening crisis, because these men and women who have pledged to defend our country oftentimes need help defending themselves. So training their families to notice and to seek help for them, and to train their buddies to be their battle buddy. There's a national program of, I've got your six. If you're in the military, that's directly behind you. You've got your back. And so to let people know that you're there looking out for them so they can look out for other people. And so instead of trying to train them, I had a friend that was a former Green Beret, and they're like, I would never do a support group. I don't sit around and talk about my feelings. That's just not who I am. And so it's like, how do we set up things where, hey, I know that you're okay. I'm paying attention to you and something's different. There's a great website. A group out of Colorado, the Carson J. Spencer Foundation, knew that most public service messages are targeted to women. And it's like, how do we reach men? And so there's a great website that I would encourage your viewers to go to. It's called mantherapy.org. And it's therapy the way a man would do it. Okay. And so it uses
I'll have to check
humor.
it out.
You should check it out. It's like, how do you talk about mental health in a manly way? Yeah. And so it's a great website. It's got good tools. But yeah, use a lot of humor and helps. Instead of calling it a depression screening, there's an 18-point head check that you can do. And it's just like, take care of your brain. And the website
again was?
mantherapy.org.
Okay, very good. We've had the privilege to interview different individuals from the Folds of Honor organization here in Oklahoma, and also Warriors for Freedom. And in so doing those interviews, we've discussed the significance and the importance of recognizing the veteran challenges that they face when they come back, and also the suicide rate. Let's go to a little bit younger category, youth suicide prevention initiatives. We touched on this a little bit last time that you were here, Shelby. Tell us what that's all about, these youth initiatives.
So we've got a new youth initiative kicking off that I'm really excited about. It is called Directing Change. So the website for that is directingchangeok.org. And what we're doing, we're recruiting the help of young people in our state to create PSAs, 1-minute PSAs, for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline Network. Because the best way to talk to young people is to let young people talk directly to them. They'll listen to their peers, and they know what they need to hear to reach out and get the help that they need. So it is a statewide PSA contest. On the website, they can get details. If you're an educator, if you're a parent, if you're a youth pastor, I encourage you to visit that site and see how the young people in your life can get involved. technology's come a long way, and you can shoot a really high quality PSA using your phone. You don't need access to the equipment, but with the program with Directing Change, they can learn information about safe messaging, how to create an effective suicide prevention message, and then enter this contest for a chance to win, have their PSAs shown statewide. We're doing a red carpet premiere in May. The deadline for entries will be April 2nd. And we're working with communities. If you have a youth group and you want to know more, visit that website, contact our office. We'll help you schedule a young filmmakers workshop where you can teach some filmmaking tips, cover some suicide prevention basics, and help the young people in your community talk about something that they're really passionate about. You know, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that's conducted by the CDC consistently shows that 15 to 17% of our Oklahoma youth say within the last 12 months they thought about suicide. And we want them to create messages to help their friends that we can use. So they know what they need to hear to feel safe. It's a program that's been implemented in California for several years, and they've researched it. And lo and behold, if you give children an opportunity, give young people a chance to create their own message, they remember the lesson. If you come into their classroom or into their college classroom or into their Sunday school class, you're going to give your 30-minute presentation, they're going to fill out their post-test, and then that's it. But if you let them work for a month and create a PSA with safe messaging, and they learn what they need to say, how they need to say it, those young people 6 months later, a year later, still remember the suicide prevention message. They know how to help a friend at risk, and they know how to reach out for help for themselves. So we're excited to be bringing that. This is our first year in Oklahoma, and we're really excited to see the films that we get submitted.
Well, just what you've shared with me sounds very, very, very impressive. Shelby Rowe is our special guest today on City Connections Your Health, and we have a couple more questions for her right after this short break. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us on City Connections, Your Health. My special guest today, Shelby Rowe. Shelby's been with us before. She is a suicide prevention program manager out of Oklahoma City and travels the state, meeting with all the boots on the ground, as she says, in regards to programs on suicide prevention. As I mentioned earlier, you can find more about I guess you'd say Shelby's personal life on the Chickasaw.tv website, because they did an extensive interview as a Chickasaw tribal member. Leads into my next question. Your office, tell us about the relationship that you have with the Oklahoma tribal nations.
Right, well, clearly because I'm Chickasaw, I have a personal interest and passion in working with our tribal nations. And so we've reached out to several of our tribes and are working on partnerships and initiatives. So, you know, we have a federal grant for suicide prevention, but there's also 3 of our tribal nations that have the exact same grant that I do. So it'd be the Muskogee Creek Nation, the Choctaw Nation, and the Wichita and affiliated tribes. And so we've started hosting a consortium quarterly meetings where we all come together so we can partner and see what we're doing in suicide prevention, because we're all working with the same kids. We're also doing some trainings, partnering up with the Department of Justice. There's a group out of OU, and they provide technical assistance to all juvenile justice kind of tribal programs. And so they're interested in suicide prevention as well. And we both have partnered with Cognito, which is an online training program. So I have, it's kind of like a stone soup model. I have a couple of the simulations. I have an online training for elementary school and middle school teachers that they can go online and how to help a student. OJJDP has an online simulation for young people called Friend to Friend. And they also have, for the high school educators, and a community policing that's trauma informed with tribal youth, online simulations. And so we can work together, and we've done some joint trainings where you can go into a school community and offer the full array of training so that all of their elementary school, middle school, high school teachers can get trained. All of their high school students can get trained, and their school resources officer, their local police officers can be trained as well, so that everyone's on the same page. And so partnering with them to keep, because Oklahoma is Indian country. You know, we have 39 recognized tribes in our state, and we have citizens from nations, from other tribal nations everywhere. And so more than any other area, you are unique to try to be culturally competent, be culturally sensitive, have that compassionate curiosity. You know, I'm Chickasaw, but if I approach another community, Cheyenne, Arapaho, something, their cultures and traditions are so different. And so knowing, hey, I need to come in asking questions and being respectful, and to know, hey, what are your traditions? What are your grief practices? And us to cater our trainings and lessons, our best practices, so that's consistent with tribal practices.
And this leads into a question in regard to that. As an individual from another tribe, you just mentioned a handful of tribes that you have that relationship and the partnership with, but if there's individuals from other tribes within Oklahoma that are watching this, what's the best way for them to reach out to you, just to have it maybe first sit down visit to say, okay, I know you're doing this for those tribes, but we're a little bit different and this is our need here. What's the recommendation? How would they reach out to you?
So there's a couple ways. The best way is to go to our website. Go to the website for Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. There's two ways they can approach me. They can find the suicide prevention and reach out to me that way, or they can approach, we have, like all state agencies, we have a tribal liaison. Her name is Jonna James. She does a fabulous job, and she is the liaison between all 39 tribes in Oklahoma and the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. And so oftentimes tribes will contact her. She's in very close contact with all the tribes. Like, what are their needs and what are things that Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services can do to help further their efforts, to help their communities, and brings us in when needed. Or if someone contacts me directly, I set up a meeting for them and I invite Jonna to the meeting, and to make sure, because I know what we're doing in suicide prevention, but Jonna will bring to the table what are we doing in other aspects, in substance abuse prevention and in mental health treatment services.
Well, hopefully after this program airs and continues to air, and then it gets out into the world, the global world, more people will see what your service is all about and the relationship that you have with tribal nations. Well, Shelby, we need to close our interview, but we can't do that without you, again, sharing these key. You had an 800 number, but there were some key numbers in the texting capability. Would you share that with us once again?
Sure. We'll start with the texting number this time first. If you are in crisis or you're worried about someone, maybe you're not in crisis, but you're like, wow, I'm really worried about my brother, I don't know what to say, you can text HELP, the word HELP, to 741-741. And they will guide you through that conversation. If you yourself are in crisis, they will help you. They will be there for you. If you're worrying about someone, they will coach you through how to help your friend or your family member stay safe. Another resource is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255. And again, that gets you in contact 24 hours a day with a trained crisis intervention specialist based in Oklahoma. You'll either talk to folks from Heartline based in Oklahoma City, or you'll talk to people from Family and Children's Services, their COPES program based out of Tulsa. And they know the resources that are available, and they can help you to get to safety as soon as possible.
Shelby Rowe, I'm impressed. You know your numbers.
I do.
You know your programs, and you know your numbers, and you know how to help people. So thank you very much for being here. Again, Shelby Rowe is our special guest today on City Connections, Your Health. Again, the Suicide Prevention Program Manager based out of Oklahoma City with the Oklahoma Department of Health and Substance Abuse Services. And one final note, Chickasaw Nation's 2016 Dynamic Woman of the Year. So congratulations for that
Thank you.
as well. So thank you for joining us here again today on City Connections. It's our pleasure to always, from the Enid Television Network, to come to your home and share topics that are of interest to everyone around the state. I'm Steve Kime with the City of Enid, and I look forward to bringing another topic and another special guest in the near future to you. Until that time, make it a great day. Thanks, everyone.